The rain-soaked barn loomed against the slate-gray horizon of Thunder Valley Ranch, its weather-beaten boards offering little protection from the storm. Drenched to the bone and trembling with exhaustion, Maggie Hayes clutched her 6-month-old daughter Emma to her chest with one arm, while the other held a cage containing a bedraggled rabbit wrapped in a child's raincoat. She had nowhere else to go, nothing left except the precious bundle against her heart and the strange companion she'd rescued along the way. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The journey back to the place she'd once fled had been the hardest decision of her life. 3 years had passed since she'd left under the cover of darkness, vowing never to return to Thunder Valley, or the man whose ring she'd once worn. Now, as thunder cracked overhead and lightning illuminated the familiar landscape, Maggie stepped into the shelter of the old barn, her heart pounding like the rain against the roof. The scent of hay and leather filled her nostrils as water dripped from her hair onto the dirt floor. Emma whimpered softly, and Maggie hushed her with gentle words, rocking her slightly while setting down the rabbit's cage. The small creature's nose twitched nervously, its brown fur partially visible beneath the tiny yellow raincoat she'd fashioned from her daughter's outgrown clothes. "It's okay, little one," she whispered, unsure if she was reassuring the rabbit or herself. "We just need to wait out the storm." The sound of boots on wet ground made her freeze. Heavy, deliberate steps approaching the barn door. Maggie's breath caught in her throat as she backed deeper into the shadows, instinctively turning to shield Emma from whoever was coming. "Hello?" The voice was deep, textured like aged whiskey over gravel. "Anyone in here?" Maggie recognized that voice immediately, though it had haunted her dreams for 3 long years. Cole Mitchell, the ranch's foreman, the man she'd left behind. "I saw the barn door open," he continued, stepping inside and shaking rain from his hat. "Thought the wind might have caught it." Maggie remained silent, hoping the shadows would conceal her. But Emma chose that moment to let out a tiny, plaintive cry. Cole's head snapped toward the sound, his hand moving instinctively to the knife at his belt. "Who's there?" His voice was sharper now, wary. "Show yourself." Taking a deep breath, Maggie stepped forward into a shaft of gray light filtering through the barn's weathered boards. "Hello, Cole." She watched as recognition dawned across his face. First surprise, then disbelief, followed quickly by a guarded expression she couldn't read. His eyes, green as summer grass, widened slightly as they took in her appearance, then shifted to the infant in her arms, and finally to the rabbit cage at her feet. "Maggie?" Her name sounded strange on his lips after all this time. "What are you doing here?" "The storm," she said simply, gesturing vaguely toward the torrential rain outside. "We needed shelter." "We?" he repeated, his gaze returning to Emma, who had quieted and was now staring at him with curious blue eyes. Something flashed across his face, a question he didn't voice. Instead, he nodded toward the cage. "And what's that supposed to be?" Despite everything, Maggie felt a smile tug at her lips. "A rabbit in a raincoat." Cole's expression didn't change, but she caught the smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth. "I can see that. Why is it wearing clothes?" "His name is Thumper. We found him abandoned on the side of the road about 20 miles back," Maggie explained. "Emma wouldn't leave without him. The raincoat was her idea. Well, as much as a 6-month-old can have ideas. She kept putting her coat on him when I took it off." A long silence stretched between them, filled only with the drumming of rain against the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder. Cole's eyes never left her face, as if he were trying to read a story written in a language he'd forgotten. "You shouldn't be here," he finally said, his voice low. "If the old man sees you—" "I know," Maggie cut him off. "Mr. Mitchell made it clear I wasn't welcome, but I didn't know where else to go." Her voice caught slightly. "We just need to wait until the storm passes. Then we'll be on our way." Cole ran a hand through his dark hair, leaving it more disheveled than before. "Where have you been all this time?" "Denver, mostly," she answered, "working at a diner, saving what I could." His eyes flicked to Emma again, the question still unasked. "She's not yours," Maggie said softly, answering what he wouldn't ask. If that's what you're wondering, something that might have been relief or disappointment crossed his features. "Married?" Maggie shook her head. "Her father isn't in the picture anymore." Cole nodded slowly, then seemed to notice her shivering for the first time. "You're soaked through. Wait here." He disappeared around the corner toward the tack room, returning moments later with a worn but clean horse blanket. "It's not much, but it's dry." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maggie took it gratefully, wrapping it around herself and Emma. The rough wool smelled like hay and horses, and faintly of Cole's aftershave. It was a scent that transported her instantly back 3 years, to lazy summer evenings sitting on the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sunset paint the valley gold. "Thank you," she murmured. Cole nodded, then crouched down to examine the rabbit's cage. Thumper pressed himself against the back wall, whiskers twitching nervously. "Friendly little fellow," Cole observed dryly. "He's been through a lot," Maggie defended. "Found him huddled under a bush, half drowned." Emma spotted him from the car window. Cole's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You always did have a soft heart for strays." The words hung between them, laden with meanings neither was ready to acknowledge. A particularly loud crack of thunder shook the barn, making Emma whimper and burrow deeper against Maggie's chest. The rabbit's cage rattled as Thumper scurried in frightened circles. "Storm's getting worse," Cole observed, rising to his feet. "You can't stay in the barn." Maggie's heart sank. "We won't bother anyone. As soon as the rain lets up." "That's not what I meant," he interrupted. "This old barn leaks like a sieve. You'll catch your death, and so will the little one." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "There's a cabin on the north edge of the property. Used to be for seasonal hands, but it's empty now." Hope flickered in Maggie's chest. "Your father doesn't go out that way anymore," Cole finished. "His arthritis has gotten worse. Can barely make it from the house to the stables these days." Maggie bit her lip, considering. "I don't want to cause trouble for you." Something like a ghost of a smile touched Cole's lips. "Too late for that, I reckon." His eyes met hers, serious now. "Stay, if it dries in time." "If what dries in time?" she asked, confused. "That ridiculous raincoat," he said, nodding toward the rabbit. "Can't have a properly dressed rabbit catching pneumonia on Mitchell land. Bad for business." For the first time in what felt like forever, Maggie laughed, a small, rusty sound but genuine. "And if it doesn't dry in time?" Cole's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held a warmth she remembered all too well. "Then I guess you'll have to stay until it does." Outside, the rain continued to pour, showing no signs of letting up anytime soon. The journey to the cabin was treacherous in the downpour. Cole insisted on carrying Emma, tucking the infant securely beneath his weatherproof duster while Maggie held the rabbit cage protected under an old tarp. They trudged through mud and puddles, the occasional flash of lightning illuminating their path across the familiar landscape that now seemed alien to Maggie. The cabin appeared through the curtain of rain, small but sturdy, with a covered porch and chimney that promised warmth. Cole fumbled with the key, pushing the door open to reveal a simple one-room dwelling with a small kitchenette, a bed in one corner, and a worn sofa near a stone fireplace. "It's not much," he said, gently handing Emma back to Maggie, "but it's dry." "It's perfect," she replied, meaning it. After months of dingy motel rooms and the cramped studio apartment she'd barely been able to afford in Denver, the cabin felt luxurious. Cole moved efficiently around the space, lighting the oil lamps that cast a warm glow across the wooden walls. He knelt by the fireplace, arranging kindling and logs with practiced hands. "There are some canned goods in the cupboard," he said without looking up, "and clean linens in the chest at the foot of the bed. Water pump works, but it'll only be cold. I'll bring some hot water from the main house later." Maggie set the rabbit cage down near the warmth of the growing fire. "Cole, I can't thank you enough. he shrugged, still focused on the flames. No need for thanks, just doing what anyone would do. No, she said softly. Not anyone. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, rising to his feet and brushing his hands on his jeans. I should get back before someone notices I'm gone. I'll bring some supplies later. Milk for the little one, maybe some proper food for your rabbit. Thumper, Maggie corrected with a small smile. His name is Thumper. Cole shook his head, but she caught the hint of amusement in his eyes. Right, Thumper. Got it. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. Maggie, he began, then seemed to think better of whatever he was going to say. Lock the door behind me. After he left, Maggie settled Emma on the bed, surrounding her with pillows to keep her from rolling off. The baby's eyelids were already drooping, exhausted from their journey. Thumper had finally emerged from beneath his raincoat, cautiously exploring his cage as the tiny garment dried near the fire. Maggie stood at the window, watching Cole's figure disappear into the rain, and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake coming back to Thunder Valley. She'd fled this place 3 years ago with a broken heart and wounded pride. Now she'd returned with nothing but a baby, a rabbit, and desperate circumstances driving her every decision. Yet something in Cole's eyes when he'd said, "Stay, if it dries in time," had kindled a dangerous ember of hope in her chest. An ember she wasn't sure she could afford to nurture. The cabin was warm and cozy by the time Cole returned 2 hours later, a large box of supplies in his arms and rain still dripping from his hat. Emma was awake, contentedly playing with a wooden spoon Maggie had found in a drawer, while Thumper had graduated from his cage to a makeshift pen Maggie had created using chairs and blankets. "Looks like you've made yourselves at home," Cole observed, setting the box on the small table. "Emma's an easy traveler," Maggie replied, helping him unpack the supplies. Canned goods, fresh bread, a small container of milk, baby formula, diapers, and even a bag of lettuce and carrots for Thumper. "The formula and diapers are from the Carson place," Cole explained. "Their youngest just outgrew them. Sarah Carson was happy to help when I said we had visitors with a little one." Maggie froze. "What did you tell them?" "That an old friend was passing through with her daughter," he said simply. "Nothing more." Relief washed over her. "Thank you." Cole nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stuffed horse. "Thought the little one might like this." It was in the lost and found at the main house, never claimed. Maggie took the toy, unexpectedly touched by the gesture. "That's very kind." He shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "How long were you planning to stay in Thunder Valley?" The question caught her off guard. I wasn't planning to stay at all. We were just passing through on our way to Oregon. My friend Jenny moved there last year, said she could help me find work." "Oregon's a long way," Cole remarked, his expression unreadable. "A fresh start," Maggie said softly. "Somewhere, no one knows us. No one judges Emma for not having a father around." Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The world can be cruel that way." "Yes," she agreed. "It can." Emma chose that moment to drop her wooden spoon and reach toward Cole with chubby hands, gurgling happily. Without hesitation, he crouched down to her level, offering his finger for her to grasp. "She's got a strong grip," he said, something like wonder in his voice. "She's strong in every way?" Maggie replied. "Had to be, considering how she came into the world." Cole looked up, a question in his eyes. Maggie sighed, knowing she owed him at least some explanation. "Her father, Mark, seemed perfect when I met him in Denver. Charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted." She laughed bitterly. "Turned out he was already married with 2 kids in Colorado Springs. When I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared. Changed his number. Moved offices. Just gone." Cole's expression darkened. "Sounds like a real gentleman." "I was naive," Maggie admitted. Again, the word hung between them, heavy with shared history. "You weren't naive," Cole said quietly. "My father lied to you. To both of us." Maggie's breath caught. They were approaching dangerous territory, the very reason she'd fled Thunder Valley 3 years ago. "It doesn't matter anymore," she said quickly. "That's all in the past." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he nodded toward Thumper, who was contentedly munching on a carrot. "Your rabbit seems to be making himself at home." Grateful for the change of subject, Maggie smiled. "He's already adopted Emma as his person. Hops over whenever she makes a sound." "Smart rabbit," Cole commented. "Knows a good thing when he sees it." Their eyes met briefly, and Maggie felt a flush creep up her neck. Cole cleared his throat and stood, breaking the moment. "I should get back. Ranch hands will be wondering where I disappeared to." "Of course," Maggie said. "Thank you again for everything." Cole hesitated at the door. "That raincoat's looking pretty dry," he observed, nodding toward the tiny yellow garments still hanging near the fire. Maggie's heart stuttered. "Is that your way of saying we should leave?" "No," he said softly. "Just an observation." After he left, Maggie sat on the edge of the bed, watching Emma play with her new stuffed horse. Coming back to Thunder Valley had been a desperate act, a last resort when she'd run out of options. She'd expected coldness, perhaps even outright rejection. What she hadn't expected was Cole's quiet kindness, or the way her heart still responded to his presence even after everything that had happened. 3 years ago, she'd been the town veterinarian's assistant, saving for veterinary school while falling hopelessly in love with the ranch foreman. Cole Mitchell had been everything she'd ever wanted: honest, hard-working, with a gentleness that belied his rough exterior. They'd planned a future together, until his father, old Mr. Mitchell, had called her to his study one evening. "He's promised to someone else," the old man had told her bluntly. "Has been since he was 18. Family arrangement with the Dawsons from the next county. The girl's finishing school back east, but she'll be home this summer for the wedding. Cole knows his duty to this family, to this land. Whatever he's promised you, he can't deliver." When confronted, Cole had seemed genuinely confused, then angry, insisting his father was lying. But doubt had already taken root in Maggie's heart. A lifetime of insecurity, of being the foster child nobody wanted to keep, of never quite belonging anywhere, had made her vulnerable to the old man's manipulation. She'd left that night, ignoring Cole's pleas to stay and talk things through. Pride and fear had driven her away, straight into another man's empty promises. Now, as Emma yawned and Thumper hopped closer to the baby as if standing guard, Maggie wondered what might have happened if she'd stayed, if she'd trusted Cole instead of running. But those were dangerous thoughts, leading nowhere but to more heartache. Tomorrow, when the storm passed, they would continue their journey to Oregon. The tiny yellow raincoat was nearly dry, after all. Outside, the rain continued to fall, as if the heavens themselves were trying to delay her departure. Thunder Valley Ranch woke early, as all ranches do. By dawn, Maggie had already fed and changed Emma, given Thumper fresh lettuce, and was heating water for coffee when a soft knock came at the door. She opened it to find Cole standing on the porch, the rising sun casting long shadows across the dew-damp grass behind him. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. "Morning," he said, hat in hand. "Thought you might want some fresh eggs for breakfast." He held up a small basket. "Thank you," Maggie said, taking the offering. "Would you like to come in? Coffee's almost ready." Cole hesitated, then nodded, stepping into the cabin with an air of careful restraint, as if afraid to take up too much space. Emma, already alert in her makeshift playpen of blankets, squealed with delight at the sight of him. "She remembers you?" Maggie observed, surprised. A small smile touched Cole's lips. "Good judge of character." "The best," Maggie agreed, turning to prepare the eggs. "How are things at the main house?" "Same as always," Cole replied, crouching down to let Emma grab his finger again. "Dad's still ornery as a wet cat, complaining about his arthritis and how the ranch is going to ruin without his constant supervision." Maggie smiled despite herself. Old Mr. Mitchell had always been a difficult man, even before he'd driven her away from his son. "And the wedding? Did it happen?" She kept her voice deliberately casual. Cole's head snapped up. "What wedding?" Maggie's hands stilled over the frying pan. "Yours, to the Dawson girl." A look of utter confusion crossed Cole's face, followed quickly by understanding and then anger. "There was never any Dawson girl. No arrangement, no wedding." But your father said—" "My father lied." Cole cut her off, his voice hard. "Is that why you left?" "Because he told you I was promised to someone else." Maggie nodded, unable to speak past the sudden lump in her throat. Cole stood slowly, his expression a storm of emotions. "He told me you left because you'd found someone else in Denver. Someone with more money, more prospects than a ranch foreman." "No," Maggie whispered, horrified. "I left because I thought you'd been lying to me all along." "I never lied to you, Maggie. Not once." The simple truth of his words hung in the air between them. 3 years of misunderstanding and pain crystallized in a single moment of clarity. "He wanted me to inherit the ranch," Cole continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Thought you were distracting me from my, quote, responsibilities. When I told him I was planning to ask you to marry me, he took matters into his own hands." "You were going to propose?" Maggie's voice was barely audible. Cole's eyes met hers, green and intense. "Had the ring in my pocket the night you disappeared." The eggs began to smoke, forgotten on the stove. Maggie quickly moved the pan off the heat, her mind reeling. All this time, all the pain and loneliness, based on a lie told by a manipulative old man. "I'm so sorry," she said finally. "I should have trusted you, should have stayed and talked it through." "And I should have come after you," Cole replied. "But pride's a powerful thing. When Dad showed me that note you left—" "What note?" Cole frowned. "The one saying you'd found someone else. That you were leaving and not to follow." Maggie shook her head slowly. "I never wrote any note." Understanding dawned on both their faces simultaneously. Old Mr. Mitchell had orchestrated the entire separation, manipulating them both with practiced precision. 3 years, Maggie said softly. "He stole 3 years from us." Cole's expression hardened, and he nearly succeeded in stealing a lifetime. He gestured toward Emma. "You have a family now, a different life." "Not the one I would have chosen," Maggie admitted. "Not if I'd known the truth." A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by Emma's happy babbling and Thumper's occasional movements in his makeshift pen. "The raincoat's dry," Cole finally said, nodding toward the tiny yellow garment now folded neatly on the table. "Completely dry." Maggie's heart sank. "So we should leave?" "That was the agreement," Cole said, his voice carefully neutral. "Stay if it dries in time." "And it has dried," Maggie finished for him, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. Cole stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the familiar scent of his aftershave mingled with morning air. "But I never specified what in time meant." Maggie looked up, confusion and hope warring in her chest. "What do you mean?" "In time for what?" Cole clarified. "Could be in time for breakfast. In time for lunch. In time for Emma's graduation from high school." A smile began to bloom on Maggie's face. "That's a long time to dry a tiny raincoat." "Worth waiting for, though," Cole said softly. "If you're willing to stay." Before she could answer, Emma let out a demanding cry, reminding them both of her presence. Maggie moved to pick her up, but Cole was already there, lifting the baby with gentle hands. "Hey there, little lady," he murmured, settling her against his chest with natural ease. "You hungry?" "Because I think your mama and I burned the eggs." Emma gurgled happily, patting Cole's cheek with a tiny hand. "She likes you," Maggie observed, her heart twisting at the sight of them together. "Feelings mutual," Cole replied, his eyes never leaving the baby's face. Then he looked up at Maggie, his expression serious. "I know she's not mine. I know you have plans, a friend waiting in Oregon, but I'm asking you to consider staying, not just until the raincoat dries, but for good." "Cole." "Not answering right now," he interrupted gently. "Just think about it. The veterinary clinic in town is still looking for help. Dr. Patterson asks about you sometimes. The old place you rented above the bookstore is vacant. Or—" he hesitated. "There's room at my place. I bought a small parcel on the east side of the ranch last year, built my own house. Nothing fancy, but plenty of space for a family." The word family hung in the air, full of possibility. "What about your father?" Maggie asked. "He made it clear I wasn't welcome in your life." Cole's expression hardened. My father doesn't dictate my life anymore. I run this ranch now, have done for the past year, since his health started failing. He may own the land, but the decisions are mine. Hope, dangerous and fragile, unfurled in Maggie's chest. I can't just upend Emma's life on a whim. We need stability, security. I'm offering both, Cole said simply, for as long as you want them. Emma reached up to grab Cole's hat, nearly unseating it from his head. He laughed, a warm, rich sound that made Maggie's heart ache with remembered joy. Think about it, he said again, gently disentangling the baby's fingers from his hat. No pressure, no rush. The raincoat can take all the time it needs to dry. After he left, promising to return later with more supplies, Maggie sat on the porch with Emma in her lap and Thumper hopping contentedly around their feet. The valley stretched before them, green and gold in the morning light, the same view she'd fallen in love with years ago. Oregon had been a desperate plan, a last resort when Denver became too expensive and too full of painful memories. But Thunder Valley, despite everything that had happened, still felt like the closest thing to home she'd ever known. As Emma played with the stuffed horse Cole had brought, Maggie wondered if perhaps the storm that had forced them to seek shelter here hadn't been misfortune after all, but a kind of blessing in disguise. The tiny yellow raincoat was indeed dry, but perhaps in time meant something different than she'd originally thought. Perhaps it meant in time for second chances, in time for healing old wounds, in time for beginning again. Perhaps it meant in time for coming home. The soft melody of Emma's laughter drifted through the open window of the cabin as Maggie hung freshly washed clothes on the line strung across the small back porch. A week had passed since the storm had brought them to Thunder Valley Ranch, a week that had stretched into 2, then 3, each day blurring into the next with surprising ease. "Your mama's working hard," Maggie heard Cole say to Emma as she re-entered the cabin. The sight that greeted her made her heart swell. Cole sitting cross-legged on the floor, Emma propped against his knee while he showed her how to pet Thumper gently. "Not too hard, little lady," he instructed softly. "Rabbits are delicate creatures," Emma gurgled happily, her tiny hand hovering above Thumper's brown fur before patting him with surprising gentleness for a 6-month-old. The rabbit, seemingly content with his young admirer, remained still, whiskers twitching occasionally. "She's a natural with animals," Cole observed, looking up as Maggie approached. "Takes after her mother that way." Maggie smiled, remembering her days working alongside Dr. Patterson at the veterinary clinic. "She does love Thumper. Cries whenever he's out of sight for too long." "Smart girl," Cole replied, his eyes lingering on Maggie's face. "Knows a good thing when she sees it." The now familiar warmth crept up Maggie's neck at his words. 3 weeks of these quiet moments, of Cole stopping by morning and evening, bringing supplies and staying for meals, of conversations that stretched long into the night after Emma had fallen asleep. 3 weeks of rebuilding trust, of healing old wounds, of rediscovering the connection that had never truly been broken. "Have you thought more about staying?" Cole asked, the question casual though his eyes were anything but. Maggie busied herself folding the baby clothes she'd brought in earlier. "I've been thinking about a lot of things." "Such as?" she sighed, turning to face him fully. "Such as whether Thunder Valley can ever truly be our home again, whether the past can be put behind us, whether your father will ever accept me, accept us." Cole's expression hardened slightly at the mention of his father. "Dad's been asking questions. Heard from the Carsons about a woman and baby staying at the old cabin." Maggie tensed. Quote, "What did you tell him?" "The truth," Cole said simply. "That you're back, and I hope you'll stay." How did he take it? Cole's wry smile told her everything she needed to know. About as well as you'd expect, but like I said before, he doesn't make the decisions around here anymore. "Still," Maggie pressed, "I don't want to be the cause of a rift between you." "That rift's been there a long time," Cole replied, gently lifting Emma as he stood. "Long before you came back. He wants me to be him, to put the ranch above everything else, even my own happiness. I tried that for a while after you left. It didn't take." Emma reached for his hat again, a game that had become familiar over the past weeks. Cole laughed, letting her grab it this time and place it atop her own head. where it promptly slipped down to cover her eyes. Her surprised giggle filled the cabin. "I went to see Dr. Patterson yesterday," Maggie admitted quietly. Cole's eyes snapped to hers, hopeful. "And?" "The assistant position is still open. He said I could start next week if I wanted." She took a deep breath. "I told him I'd think about it." That's good," Cole said carefully, trying to contain his obvious pleasure at the news. "The old apartment above the bookstore is still available too. Mrs. Winters was asking about you just yesterday." Maggie nodded slowly. "I spoke with her as well. She's holding it for me until I decide." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, that she was considering the apartment rather than his earlier offer to share his home. But he masked it quickly, focusing on retrieving his hat from Emma, who had managed to push it up just enough to peek out from under the brim. "Looks better on you anyway, little lady," he told her with a smile. Later, after Cole had left for evening chores and Emma was sleeping peacefully in the makeshift crib he'd built for her, Maggie stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the valley in shades of gold and crimson. Thumper hopped around her feet, his yellow raincoat long since put away but not forgotten. "What do you think, Thumper?" she asked softly. "Is it time to stop running? To trust again?" The rabbit paused, nose twitching as if considering her question, before continuing his exploration of the porch. "Not much help, are you?" Maggie smiled, crouching to stroke his soft fur. The sound of an approaching vehicle drew her attention. A truck was making its way up the rough track to the cabin, not Cole's familiar blue pickup, but the ranch's larger work truck. As it drew closer, Maggie's stomach tightened. Behind the wheel sat Howard Mitchell, Cole's father. The old man parked and climbed out slowly, his movements stiff with age and arthritis. He stood leaning slightly on a walking stick, regarding her with the same stern expression she remembered from 3 years ago. "Mr. Mitchell," she acknowledged, straightening up. "Margaret," he replied, using her full name as he always had. "Heard you were back." "Just temporarily," she said, the lie automatic even as something inside her rebelled against it. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes, the same shade of green as Cole's but lacking their warmth, taking in her appearance. "That's what you said last time. Just passing through. Ended up staying nearly a year." "Things are different now," Maggie replied, gesturing vaguely toward the cabin where Emma slept. "So I hear." The old man took a few labored steps toward the porch. "Cole tells me you have a daughter. Her name is Emma. She's 6 months old." Howard nodded slowly. "And her father?" "Not in the picture," Maggie said firmly, "and not likely to be." "I see." He leaned more heavily on his stick. "Mind if I sit? These old bones aren't what they used to be." Surprised by the request, Maggie nodded toward the porch swing. "Of course." She watched as he made his way up the steps, noting how much he'd aged in 3 years. The once imposing figure seemed diminished somehow, though no less intimidating in presence. "Cole's different since you came back," Howard said once he was settled. "Got a spark in him I haven't seen in years." Unsure how to respond, Maggie remained silent. "He blames me for you leaving," the old man continued. "Says I drove you away with lies." "Didn't you?" Maggie couldn't keep the edge from her voice. Howard's weathered face remained impassive. "I did what I thought was best for my son, for this ranch. Cole was born to run Thunder Valley, just like I was, just like my father before me. His head was full of other ideas when he met you. Veterinary school, traveling, seeing the world. Those were his dreams," Maggie said softly. "Not mine." "They became yours together," Howard countered, "and they would have taken him away from where he belongs. So you lied to both of us, told me he was promised to another woman, told him I'd found someone else." Howard had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "I did what needed doing." "And was it worth it?" Maggie asked, anger rising in her chest. 3 years of your son's unhappiness? Of mine? Did it make the ranch more successful? Did it make Cole love this land more? The old man's gaze shifted to the valley below, where the last rays of sunlight gilded the pastures. "No," he admitted finally. "It did not." The simple acknowledgement took the wind from Maggie's sails. She sat down on the porch step, keeping a respectful distance from the swing. "Cole says you're thinking of staying," Howard said after a long silence. "Taking your old job with Patterson. I'm considering it. And the girl, Emma. She needs stability. A proper home." Maggie tensed, preparing for another battle. "She has me. That's all she needs." To her surprise, Howard nodded. Every child needs their mother. But they need more than that too. They need roots, community, family. "Are you saying what I think you're saying, Mr. Mitchell?" The old man sighed heavily. "I'm saying I was wrong, Margaret. About many things." He shifted uncomfortably on the swing. "Pride's a terrible thing when it gets in the way of seeing clearly. Takes someone stronger than me to admit when they've made a mistake." Maggie studied him, looking for signs of manipulation or deceit, but found only weariness, and something that might have been regret. "Cole loves you," Howard continued. "Never stopped, far as I can tell. And that little girl in there. She deserves a father who'll look at her the way Cole does, like she hung the moon and stars herself." "Emma isn't his responsibility," Maggie said softly. "Love isn't about responsibility," Howard replied, surprising her with his insight. "It's about choice. Cole's chosen both of you, plain as day." Before Maggie could respond, Emma's cry came through the open window. She stood immediately, maternal instinct overriding all else. "You should go to her," Howard said, using his stick to lever himself up from the swing. "I've said what I came to say." Maggie hesitated at the door. "Why now? After all this time, why change your mind?" The old man looked suddenly older, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "Because time isn't on my side anymore, Margaret. The doctors gave me 6 months. Maybe a year if I'm lucky." Shock rendered Maggie momentarily speechless. "Does Cole know?" Howard shook his head slowly. "Not yet. Wanted to make things right with you first." As he made his way carefully down the porch steps, Maggie called after him. "Mr. Mitchell?" He turned back, eyebrows raised. "Thank you," she said simply, "for telling me the truth." Finally. A ghost of a smile touched the old man's lips. "Better late than never, I suppose." Emma's cries grew more insistent, and Maggie hurried inside to attend to her daughter, her mind reeling from the unexpected conversation. By the time she'd settled Emma and returned to the porch, Howard Mitchell's truck was disappearing down the track, leaving a trail of dust in the fading light. That evening, when Cole arrived with fresh milk and a small stuffed rabbit for Emma to keep her company when Thumper's busy, Maggie told him about his father's visit. He said, "What?" Cole's disbelief was evident as they sat on the porch steps, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. "That he was wrong," Maggie repeated. "That he shouldn't have interfered." Cole shook his head in wonder. "Never thought I'd hear those words from him." Maggie hesitated, uncertain whether to share Howard's revelation about his health. It wasn't her place to tell Cole such news, yet keeping it from him felt dishonest. "There's something else," she said carefully. "Something your father mentioned that you should ask him about. Something important." Cole studied her face in the gathering dusk. "His health? The doctor's appointment in Bozeman last month?" Surprised, Maggie nodded. "You know?" "Suspected," Cole corrected. "Dad's been putting his affairs in order, spending more time looking through old photo albums than checking the ledgers. And he asked me last week to start calling him Howard instead of Dad when we're working with the hands." He sighed heavily. "How long did he say?" 6 months. Maybe a year." Cole absorbed this with the quiet stoicism she remembered, though pain flickered briefly across his features. "Explains a lot," he said finally, "including this sudden change of heart about you." "Does it change things for you?" Maggie asked softly. knowing he's ill? Quote, Cole considered this, absently twisting a piece of grass between his fingers. Changes how I feel about some things, I suppose. Makes me less angry. He looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the first evening stars. Doesn't change how I feel about you, though. Or about Emma. The simple honesty of his words warmed Maggie more than the lingering heat of the day. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the valley, crickets beginning their evening chorus, an owl calling from the distant tree line. I've decided to take the job with Dr. Patterson, Maggie said eventually. Start next Monday. Cole's face lit up with genuine pleasure. That's wonderful news. And the apartment above the bookstore, she continued. Mrs. Winters is holding it for us. Something like disappointment flickered across his features, quickly masked. That's good. It's a nice place, lots of natural light. Emma will like the window seat. Maggie took a deep breath, gathering her courage. But I was thinking, maybe we could look at your place too. The house you built. She met his gaze steadily, just to see all our options before deciding. Hope dawned in Cole's eyes, cautious but unmistakable. I'd like that, he said softly. Very much. The next day dawned clear and bright, a perfect late spring morning in the valley. Cole arrived early, his truck freshly washed, a nervousness about him that made Maggie smile. This was a side of Cole Mitchell she'd rarely seen, the confident ranch foreman uncertain and eager to please. It's not much, he warned as they drove eastward across the ranch property, Emma securely fastened in the car seat he'd installed. Nothing fancy. I'm sure it's perfect, Maggie assured him, enjoying his uncharacteristic anxiety. They crested a small rise, and suddenly there it was. A neat log cabin nestled against a backdrop of aspen trees, with a wide covered porch and large windows catching the morning light. A small barn stood nearby, and a corral where 2 horses grazed peacefully. Wildflowers dotted the meadows surrounding the house, creating a natural garden of yellow, purple, and white blooms. Oh, Cole, Maggie breathed. It's beautiful. Relief washed over his face. Yeah? You like it? It's exactly the kind of place I always imagined, she admitted. Remember how we used to talk about building something just like this? Cole nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I remember. Had those plans drawn up, the ones you sketched on napkins at the diner. You kept those? Built from them, he said simply, pulling up in front of the house. The interior was just as perfect, open and airy, with rustic wooden beams and a stone fireplace dominating the living area. The kitchen was small but well-equipped, flowing naturally into a dining space with windows overlooking the meadow. A hallway led to 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Everything simple but thoughtfully designed. The second bedroom, Cole said hesitantly, as they stood in the doorway of a sunny room with pale yellow walls. I thought it could be Emma's. If you decided to stay. Maggie turned to him, Emma balanced on her hip. You built this house for a family. It wasn't a question, but Cole nodded anyway. Built it with hope, I guess. Even when I didn't have much reason for it. Emma squirmed to be put down, and Maggie set her gently on the wooden floor, watching as she immediately began exploring her surroundings, crawling with determined efficiency toward a patch of sunlight. She likes it, Maggie observed with a smile. And her mother? Cole asked, his voice soft with vulnerability. Maggie looked around the room once more, taking in the careful craftsmanship, the attention to detail, the way the house seemed to welcome them despite its newness. Or perhaps it was simply that Cole himself filled any space with a sense of home. Her mother likes it very much, she admitted. It feels like... Like what? Cole prompted when she hesitated. Like the home I've been looking for all my life, Maggie finished quietly. The one I never thought I'd find. Cole's eyes, warm and green as summer grass, held hers. It could be, you know. Yours. Both of yours. Is that an official offer, Mr. Mitchell? Maggie asked, her heart beating faster despite her teasing tone. Depends, he replied, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Is there a chance you might accept?" Before she could answer, Emma let out a delighted squeal from her spot on the floor, having discovered a small toy horse hidden beneath the windowsill, a miniature version of the stuffed one Cole had given her. "Seems like Emma's vote is already cast," Maggie laughed. Crows, sing the room to retrieve her daughter, who clutched the toy horse possessively. "Smart kid," Cole observed, coming to stand beside them. "Gets that from her mother, too." The warmth in his voice made Maggie look up, finding his face closer than she expected. For a moment, they stood perfectly still, the three of them forming a tableau of possibility. "I'm still afraid," Maggie admitted in a whisper, "of trusting again, of being hurt." "I know," Cole replied, his voice equally soft. "But some things are worth the risk, don't you think?" Emma, oblivious to the significance of the moment, reached out and patted Cole's cheek with her tiny hand, the toy horse still clutched in her other fist. The simple gesture, so trusting and affectionate, brought unexpected tears to Maggie's eyes. "She's never done that with anyone but me," she whispered. Cole smiled, gently catching Emma's hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Like I said, smart kid." They looked, Maggie realized with a start, exactly like a father and daughter sharing a precious moment together. Not by blood, but by something perhaps even stronger, by choice, by love freely given and joyfully received. "And the little lamb found his way home," Cole was saying, his voice taking on different tones for each character. "Because home isn't always where you start out, but where you're meant to be." The simple words from a children's story struck Maggie with unexpected force. Home. After years of searching, of running, of never quite belonging anywhere, she'd found it here in this cabin with its handmade furniture and wildflower meadow, with the man who'd built it from dreams they'd once shared, and with the daughter who'd completed their unlikely family. "Hey," Cole called, spotting her in the doorway. "Come join story time before you head to work." As Maggie settled beside them on the floor, Emma immediately reached for her with chubby hands, gurgling happily. Cole's arm slipped naturally around Maggie's shoulders, drawing her closer into their circle. "One more story," he suggested, "and then Mama has to go make all the animals of Thunder Valley feel better." "Just the domesticated ones," Maggie corrected with a smile, though Mrs. Peterson did bring in a raccoon last week that had gotten into her trash and cut its paw. "Always was a soft touch for anything with fur or feathers," Cole teased, his eyes warm with admiration. "Remember that three-legged coyote you insisted on treating, even though Dad said it would just go back to hunting our calves?" Maggie laughed at the memory. Turned out he preferred dog food to veal. Lived under the clinic porch for years after that. "Old tripod," Cole nodded. "Dad never admitted you were right about him." "Howard Mitchell doesn't admit he's wrong very often," Maggie agreed, which makes his apology to me all the more meaningful. They shared a look of understanding, both aware of how precious these moments of connection were, not just between themselves, but between Howard and the family he'd once tried to keep apart. "Dr. Patterson's going to wonder where I am," Maggie said reluctantly, glancing at the clock on the mantel. Cole pressed a kiss to her temple, a gesture so natural now it seemed impossible they'd ever been apart. "We'll be here when you get back. Maybe take a ride up to the north pasture if the weather holds." Emma loves watching the horses. The casual assurance that they would be there, waiting for her return, filled Maggie with a contentment she'd never thought possible. This was what belonging felt like. Not temporary shelter from a storm, but a permanent place in someone's life, in someone's heart. As she drove the short distance to town, Maggie reflected on how quickly Thunder Valley had welcomed her back, as if her 3-year absence had been nothing more than a brief misunderstanding. Dr. Patterson had hired her without hesitation, the townspeople had greeted her with genuine warmth, and even Howard Mitchell had made peace with her return. Only one shadow remained on their happiness, a shadow named Mark Evans, Emma's biological father, who knew nothing of his daughter's existence and, Maggie hoped, never would. She'd kept no contact information for him after discovering his deception, had made no attempt to inform him of her pregnancy. As far as she was concerned, he'd forfeited any right to Emma the moment he'd disappeared from Maggie's life. Yet occasionally, in quiet moments when doubt crept in, she wondered if she'd made the right choice. If someday Emma would resent her for denying her the chance to know her biological father. however unworthy he might be. The question had become more pressing since Cole had entered their lives. Though he never pressured or rushed, his growing attachment to Emma was obvious, as was hers to him. They were forming bonds that went beyond temporary caregiving, bonds that felt permanent and profound. "Morning, Maggie." Dr. Patterson's greeting broke through her thoughts as she entered the clinic. The older veterinarian was already checking in their first patient of the day, a border collie with an ear infection. "How's that little girl of yours?" "Growing like a weed," Maggie replied with a smile, slipping into her lab coat. "And talking more every day, though I'm not sure anyone but Cole can understand her babbling." Dr. Patterson's eyes twinkled. "That man's smitten, and not just with the baby. When are you two going to make it official?" The question, though asked with kindness, made Maggie flush. "We're taking things slow." "Nothing wrong with that." The veterinarian nodded, building on solid ground this time. As the day progressed, Maggie fell easily into the familiar rhythm of the clinic, vaccinating puppies, treating a horse with colic, removing stitches from Mrs. Winter's cat who'd had an unfortunate encounter with a barbed wire fence. The work was satisfying, using skills she'd honed before leaving Thunder Valley and had maintained during her time in Denver. During a quiet moment between appointments, she checked her phone to find a message from Cole, a photo of Emma sitting in front of Thumper's cage, both of them appearing to be in deep conversation. "Serious negotiations underway," the caption read. Something about more carrots and later bedtimes. Maggie smiled, tracing her daughter's face on the screen. At 8 months, Emma was becoming more expressive every day, her personality emerging in delightful ways. She had Maggie's dark curls and determined chin, but her eyes, those were all marks, a reminder Maggie couldn't escape even if she wanted to. Would those eyes someday look at her with accusation? With the question of why she'd denied Emma half her heritage. "Heavy thoughts for a Tuesday morning," Dr. Patterson observed, catching her expression as he passed through the reception area. Maggie sighed, tucking her phone away. "Just worrying about the future. Mother's prerogative, I suppose." "Future has a way of working itself out," the older man said kindly. "Especially when you've got good people beside you." His words stayed with Maggie throughout the day, a reminder that whatever challenges lay ahead, she no longer faced them alone. She had Cole, whose steady presence had become the foundation of her new life. She had a community that had welcomed her back without judgment. She had work that fulfilled her, and a home that nurtured her. The shadows of the past, Howard's manipulation, Mark's betrayal, her own fears and insecurities, could only dim such brightness if she allowed them to. By the time she finished her shift and headed back to the cabin, Maggie had resolved to focus on the present, on the joy of each day with Emma and Cole, rather than borrowing trouble from an uncertain future. She found them in the corral behind the house, Cole holding Emma securely as they sat atop his gentle mare, Daisy. The baby's delighted squeals carried across the meadow as Cole walked the horse in slow circles, one strong arm keeping Emma safely against his chest. "Mama's home," he called when he spotted Maggie's car. "Should we show her what we learned today?" Maggie approached the fence, her heart swelling at the sight of them together. Emma in her tiny cowboy hat, a gift from one of the ranch hands. Cole's expression a mixture of pride and protectiveness as he guided Daisy closer. "And what did you learn, Miss Emma?" Maggie asked, reaching up to stroke her daughter's cheek. "Watch this." Cole grinned, then made a clicking sound with his tongue. Emma immediately mimicked the noise, and Daisy obediently moved forward a few steps. "She's a natural horsewoman," Cole declared proudly. "Been doing that all afternoon." "Her first trick," Maggie laughed. "Next, she'll be roping calves and branding steers." "Not until she's at least 2, Cole joked, swinging down from the saddle with Emma securely in his arms. "We've got to be reasonable parents here." The casual use of "we" and "parents" sent a warm glow through Maggie's chest. Though they'd never formally discussed Cole's role in Emma's life, it had evolved naturally over the past months, from interested friend to devoted caregiver to something that, for all intents and purposes, resembled fatherhood. Later that evening, after Emma had been bathed and put to bed with her stuffed horse and rabbit watching guard from the corner of her crib, Maggie and Cole sat on the porch swing, enjoying the cool night air and the canopy of stars overhead. These quiet moments had become precious to them both. Time to talk about their days, to plan for the future, or simply to sit in companionable silence, reconnecting after hours apart. "Had a letter from Jenny today," Maggie mentioned, referring to the friend in Oregon she'd once planned to join. "She's getting married in September," asked if we'd come to the wedding. Cole's arm, draped casually along the back of the swing, tightened slightly around her shoulders. "We?" "She specifically mentioned you and Emma," Maggie clarified. "Said she's dying to meet the man who, quote, finally tamed Maggie Hayes' wanderlust." A smile played at the corners of Cole's mouth. "Have I? Tamed it?" Maggie considered the question seriously. "I think it was never really wanderlust," she said slowly. "More like searching for something I couldn't quite name." "And have you found it?" Cole's voice was soft in the darkness. Maggie turned to face him, taking in his familiar features illuminated by the porch light. The strong line of his jaw, the slight crinkles at the corners of his eyes, the mouth that could curve into the smile that had first captured her heart years ago. "I think I have," she whispered. "I think I found it the moment I stopped running, the moment I came back to Thunder Valley, to you." Cole's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle as a summer breeze. "I've wanted to ask you something," he said, his voice rough with emotion, been trying to find the right moment, the right words. Maggie's heart quickened, recognizing the seriousness in his tone. "Ask me now," she encouraged softly. Instead of speaking, Cole reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Even in the dim light, there was no mistaking what it contained. "This isn't the ring I had 3 years ago," he said quietly. "That one got lost somewhere along the way. But this one I had made special, with you and Emma in mind." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver band, set with a small diamond flanked by 2 smaller stones, one blue, one green. "The blue is Emma's birthstone," Cole explained. "The green is the color of Thunder Valley in spring, when everything's new and full of promise." Tears welled in Maggie's eyes as she stared at the ring, its symbolism more precious than any traditional diamond could ever be. "I'm not just asking you to marry me, Maggie," Cole continued, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "I'm asking to be Emma's father too, in every way that matters, in every way I can be. I want to give her my name, my heart, my promise to always be there for both of you." "Cole," Maggie whispered, too overwhelmed to say more. "I know it's a lot," he acknowledged. "And I know we've only been back in each other's lives for a few months. If you need time—" "No," Maggie interrupted, finding her voice at last. "No more time. We've lost enough of that already." She took his face between her hands, looking directly into his eyes. "Yes, Cole Mitchell. Yes to marrying you. Yes to you being Emma's father. Yes to building a life together here at Thunder Valley." The joy that blazed across Cole's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, sudden and glorious and full of promise. He slipped the ring onto her finger, where it settled as if it had always belonged there, then drew her into a kiss that held all the longing of their years apart and all the hope of their future together. When they finally broke apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her lips. "There's one more thing," he said softly. "Something I need to tell you before you commit to this." A flicker of anxiety passed through Maggie. "What is it?" Cole took a deep breath. "I've been looking into adoption laws. For Emma. If that's something you'd want, for me to legally adopt her as my daughter." Fresh tears sprang to Maggie's eyes. "You'd do that? Take on that responsibility legally, not just in practice?" "In a heartbeat," Cole replied without hesitation. "But there's a complication. Her biological father would need to relinquish his parental rights. Or we'd need to prove abandonment." The shadow Maggie had been avoiding suddenly loomed large. "Mark doesn't even know she exists. I never told him I was pregnant." Cole nodded, his expression serious, but not judgmental. "I figured as much. And I understand why you made that choice, Maggie. But if we want to make this official, if you want me to be Emma's legal father, we might need to find him to get his consent." The thought of contacting Mark Evans, of bringing him back into their lives even peripherally, made Maggie's stomach twist with anxiety. Yet the alternative, denying Emma the security of Cole's legal protection and commitment, seemed equally unthinkable. What if he wants to be involved? She whispered her deepest fear. What if he challenges us? Cole's expression hardened slightly. Then we fight. Together. But Maggie, a man who would walk away from you without a backward glance isn't likely to suddenly want fatherhood thrust upon him. You're probably right, Maggie acknowledged, though doubt still lingered. And Emma deserves to have you as her father in every sense of the word. We don't have to decide anything tonight, Cole assured her, stroking her hair gently. We've got time to figure it out, to do what's best for all of us. As they sat together in the quiet darkness, the weight of this new challenge settled between them, not as a barrier, but as a shared burden, one they would carry together. Overhead, a shooting star traced a brilliant path across the velvet sky. Make a wish, Cole whispered, echoing words from another time. Another story. Maggie closed her eyes, heart full of hope despite the uncertainties ahead. She wished not for an easy path. Life had taught her that such wishes were futile, but for the strength to face whatever came their way, and for the wisdom to recognize the blessings already in her grasp. When she opened her eyes, Cole was watching her with a tenderness that made her heart ache with happiness. What did you wish for? He asked softly. Maggie smiled, lifting her hand to admire the ring that now adorned her finger, the symbol of promises made and kept, of a future built on trust restored and love rekindled. This, she said simply, exactly this. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.